a cold winter morning in February, the 23rd to be exact, in the year 1831, near the town of Winhall, Vermont, Harvey and Elizabeth were blessed with the birth of their new son. And even though Winhall was an ordinary and average town, and his parents were of ordinary and average means, the new arrival, Harvey Merrick Vaile, would grow up to be anything but ordinary and average. 50 years later, on October 12, 1881, Harvey Vaile and his beloved wife, Sophia, moved into their opulent new home in Independence, Missouri. In 1882, an article appeared in the Kansas City Times describing the residence as the Mansion of Gold. It went on to say that it was the most princely house and the most comfortable home in the entire West. Known to local residents as the Vaile Mansion, this stunning example of Second Empire architecture has a long, though somewhat dark and mysterious, history. We're going to take an up-close and personal view of the people and the events surrounding this mansion and uncover some of the secrets that still reside within its walls. So let's begin our journey back in time and examine the chain of events that led us to where we are today. By the 1840s, the Vaile family had moved from Winhall to New York, where Harvey Vaile earned his early income as a teacher and continued his teaching profession in Pennsylvania and Mississippi. Eventually, Harvey had saved enough money to enter law school in Louisville, Kentucky, where he graduated with honors. With his law degree in hand, Harvey returned to Indianapolis, where he worked as an attorney while dabbling in the newspaper industry as a writer for the Indianapolis Journal and the Evening Gazette. Harvey was deeply involved in the organization of the Republican Party and a strong supporter of the anti-slavery movement. He penned several articles expressing his opinion on that topic. This would later get him into a bit of trouble. In 1859, Harvey Vaile moved to Kansas City, where he joined a law partnership and continued his abolitionist activities. His affiliation with the Republicans continued, and he became a major organizer for the party in Kansas City. Obviously, Harvey was an avid supporter of Abraham Lincoln, and he continued writing newspaper editorials clearly illustrating his agreement with Lincoln's policies. Unfortunately, Abraham Lincoln was not popular in the Southern-influenced pre-Civil War environment of Missouri. When it became known that Harvey Vaile had written those articles, it is rumored that he barely made a safe escape from an enraged mob. Two years after arriving in Kansas City, Harvey Vaile's life changed forever when Cupid's arrow struck his heart. From the moment he met the Kansas City native Cecilia Sophia Graham, Harvey knew she was destined to be his life's partner. Apparently Cecilia, or Sophia as Harvey called her, felt the same. They were married in 1861, and they remained in Kansas City for a short while before moving a few miles east to the more open spaces surrounding the town of Independence, Missouri. During the early years of their marriage, Harvey made frequent trips and spent a large amount of his time in Washington, D.C. Although he never held office, it is rumored that he was a highly respected lobbyist. In 1863, while Americans were shooting each other and the South was burning, Harvey Vaile was signing a contract with the United States government to carry mail from Independence, Missouri to Santa Fe, New Mexico. This would be known as the Old Star Route contract, that later came back to haunt him and may have been the underlying cause of his beloved Sophia's death. The Star Route was a huge enterprise, employing hundreds of men. The route itself crossed 5 states and 2 Indian territories and comprised thousands of square miles. Always the shrewd businessman, Harvey Vaile capitalized on this opportunity by opening 16 cattle ranches along the route. By the 1870s, the Civil War had ended. While Harvey Vaile continued to practice law and earn additional income from his star route and cattle ventures, his personal assets were expanding exponentially. At that time, his property holdings had surpassed 2,000 acres, making him one of the largest landowners in the county. This acreage consisted of not only grazing land for cattle and sheep, but farmland, vineyards, and orchards. Harvey Vaile lived as if he were the wealthiest man in the city, and, truth be told, he probably was. During the final years of the 1870s, like many of the elite class, Colonel Harvey Vaile, as he was called, although there is no record of any military service, and Mrs. Sophia Vaile made an ocean voyage to Europe. While in France, the couple toured the Normandy region and visited a chateau. They were both greatly impressed with the architecture, the high mansard roof, the ornate ironwork, and the classic style. It was the inspiration that they had been searching for, and they decided to replicate the style on their estate when designing their new home in Independence. Construction of the Vaile Mansion is believed to have begun in 1880. A close friend and notable Kansas City architect, Asa B.B. Cross, was selected to design and build the mansion, working from designs that Harvey had drawn based on their visit to the Normandy Chateau. It was a good fit because Asa Cross was well known for his trademark design that included excessive ornamentation. Originally sitting on 1,600 acres, the home was constructed of white limestone trim surrounding walls of hand-pressed red brick, kilned on the property from local clay and masterfully crafted by local brick mason William Randall. The opulent estate contains 31 rooms, 9 Carrara marble fireplaces, 112 windows, painted ceilings, gas heat, hot and cold running water, flushing toilets, copper bathtubs, marble wash basins, and a 6,000-gallon water tank concealed in an 80-foot tower at the rear of the mansion. It's all topped with a mansard roof, periodically pierced by cornices, dormers, gables, wrought iron finials, and towers. While no expense was spared on the interior, the landscaping was equally stunning. On the northwest corner of the estate, there was a spring-fed lake large enough for boating, with an island in the center where picnics were held. The grounds also included a gazebo, a pergola, arbors, fountains, a grandstand, a boathouse, a covered bridge, and a 48,000-gallon wine cellar. Meandering paths extended in every direction, and gas lamps illuminated the grounds for evening social occasions. There was also a greenhouse, along with a staff of 4 full-time gardeners to maintain the landscaping. Some estimate the original cost of the house at $100,000. Others calculate it closer to $150,000, roughly equivalent to $15 million in today's market. The main floor of the mansion was comprised of sitting rooms, a large parlor for entertaining, a formal dining room, a library, all hung with crystal chandeliers originally intended for the White House. Artists from Italy, France, and Germany, who were the best of their respective crafts, were engaged to paint murals and frescoed ceilings throughout the house. One infamous work decorates the ceiling of the master bedroom, known as Innocence Reclining on a Couch, and considered by many to be the image of Sophia. The subject is painted nude from the waist up. When the Victorian-era ladies saw the painting, Sophia Vaile was immediately snubbed from their society and spoken of in hushed whispers throughout the region for allowing such an obscene portrait in her beautiful home. A ballroom and a billiard room were planned for the third floor of the mansion. Sadly, something happened to prevent that, and 133 years later, the third floor of the Vaile Mansion still remains unfinished and off-limits to visitors. Living the life of luxury, with all the amenities anyone of that era could hope for, Harvey and Sophia's life at Vaile Mansion was bright and golden. But a dark and ominous tragedy was about to knock on their door. Two months after Harvey and Sophia Vaile moved into their dream home, the old Star Route contract that Harvey had signed in the 1860s came back to haunt him when he was accused of the serious crime of mail fraud. The trial date was set for June 1st, 1882, in the District of Columbia. When no verdict was reached, a new trial was scheduled to convene the following year. It's been suggested that during this troublesome period, with the possibility of prison hanging over his head, Harvey Vaile began to deteriorate and even went a bit crazy. Worry and stress took its toll on Sophia as well, resulting in depression and illness. It was while Harvey was in Washington, D.C., facing a second trial, that the tragic event occurred. On February 14, 1883, after living in her dream home for just a little over a year, Sophia overdosed on morphine, and she died the following day. Some say Sophia's death was an accident, since she had been taking the morphine for the depression and illness that had consumed her. Others believe she committed suicide because of the impending possibility of Harvey's conviction and the unthinkable idea of living in the mansion without him. Over the years since her death, the truth of the matter has faded into history. If it was suicide, it was for naught, because when the trial concluded, Colonel Harvey Vaile was exonerated of all charges. Harvey never got over the death of his beloved Sophia. In the end, neither Harvey Vaile nor the beautiful mansion of gold he had built for his bride would ever be the same. After suffering a paralytic stroke, Harvey joined his departed Sophia on June 4th, 1894. Shortly after Harvey's death, and after a bit of a court battle, Miss Carrie Mae Carroll, became the new owner of the Vaile Mansion when she purchased it for the grand total sum of $1. Her first item of business was to turn the mansion into an inn for travelers. Unfortunately, that idea did not work out nearly as well as she expected. When the Vaile Inn failed, Carrie May decided to use the house for the offices of the Vaile Pure Water Company, which was bottled from a mineral spring located on the property. Apparently, Carrie May did not have the business acumen that Harvey Vaile possessed, because that venture also ended in total and utter failure. Around 1910, Carrie May married a Dr. Sprague. As was common practice for many older homes during the early part of the 20th century, the couple turned the mansion into an asylum for mental patients. Eventually, due to the inhumane conditions and the ill treatment the patients received at the hands of the staff, the state of Missouri closed the home down. After being shut down, and after the Spragues cleaned up their act a bit, the state allowed them to convert the home to a nursing facility, which it remained until Mrs. Sprague's death in 1960. Around that time, a developer was interested in the land, with the idea of demolishing the mansion. Fortunately, Harvey and Sophia's beautiful home was saved from destruction by Roger and Mary DeWitt, who purchased the property for $60,000. They began a long project of restoration and were responsible for the Vaile Mansion being placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Less than a week before her death in 1983, Mrs. DeWitt deeded the property to the City of Independence. Later that same year, the Vaile Victorian Society began refurbishing the mansion with donated and purchased pieces. And although the Vaile Mansion has now been restored to its former glory, and even though there is a beautiful love story surrounding it, the house still holds a few dark and hidden secrets. Due to its dark history, there are many rumors surrounding the Vaile Mansion. Some of them are more factual than others. Let's examine what we know, what can be verified, and what we've heard. One story that has since been disputed by the stewards of the mansion, who, by the way, do not mention the darker parts of the mansion's history, is that after Sophia died, Harvey had a glass coffin built for her. He had it buried at ground level on the property so that he could see her every day. When the community heard of this, Harvey was forced to move the casket to a more suitable location and give Sophia a proper burial. There are witnesses who report that Sophia's spirit has been seen at times inside the mansion, walking down the stairs, staring out the windows, or wandering the halls. There are also stories that, sometimes, late at night, screams and weeping have been heard coming from the mansion. And although usually very tight-lipped when asked about the paranormal aspects of the mansion, one staff member reported seeing imprints left on the freshly made bed in one second-floor bedroom, even though no one had been in the room since the bed was made. There is also the story of the strange room that Harvey had built after Sophia died. Located on the north side of the mansion's first floor, it is a tiny room with a bay window and barely large enough to accommodate a single chair. Apparently, alone in his mansion, Harvey Vaile would spend time in that room looking out over his vast property. An additional strange aspect of this room is the unusual woodwork. It seems that Harvey hired a woodcarver to put faces into the grain of the wood. But these aren't all happy faces. Those who have seen them will tell you that these faces have an evil and almost demonic appearance. Another legend relates to the fact that there are two sets of shutters on every window, an inside pair and another pair on the outside. The inside shutters always remain closed. Some say this is done to preserve the old, delicate furniture inside. Maybe so, but perhaps not. In addition to the story that Sophia haunts the house, either trapped there because of her suicide or simply unwilling to leave the palace built for her by her husband, a glowing image of Harvey has also been seen, either walking the grounds or sometimes observed peering out of that strange, tiny room he built. If you were to ask any of the staff that work in the house today, they would probably deny the validity of any reported supernatural incidents. This is obviously not the only information about the house that the museum wishes to cover up or alter. As mentioned, the third floor is off limits to the public. The staff claims it is because it remains unfinished and is being used for storage. However, since the mansion is constantly in a state of restoration, it seems odd that the third floor has never been completed in the past 133 years. Some claim the third floor to be the location where some of the less violent patients of the asylum were locked up. It is considered by many to be an area with a great deal of paranormal activity because of the numerous deaths that occurred there. Many believe that's the primary reason the third floor is still off limits to visitors. Perhaps the most disturbing story surrounding the Vaile Mansion involves the time Carrie May and Dr. Sprague owned the home and operated it as an asylum for mental patients. Legend tells us that some of the more violent patients were resigned to the basement, where they were confined in metal cages. And even though most of the staff won't enter this lower level, at least one has confirmed that the resting cages are still there, as well as voices and other strange sounds. It is also believed that the basement was used as a morgue, where the bodies of the deceased were temporarily stored during the time the mansion was used as an asylum. Records during that period are a bit sketchy, but it appears that numerous surgeries were performed at the mansion. There was very little regulation in those days, and there was an abundant supply of patients with whom to experiment. During the 1930s, the, quote, Vaile became infamous as a place where surgeons with possibly questionable credentials performed lobotomies on the insane. Most of these atrocities were performed on the second floor, near the rear of the building, in the area that was previously used as the servants' quarters. There are many reports of strange voices that have been heard coming from that area. While most of the house staff will admit that the mansion was once used as an old folks' home, they will likely deny it was ever used as an asylum or that any surgeries were performed. Instead, they may insist that the public has simply misinterpreted the history. The historic Vaile Mansion continues to be shrouded in mystery. The truth is there somewhere, but it seems apparent that the museum wishes to keep the darker side out of the light and does not want to advertise the home as being haunted for fear that it will reduce traffic. Some feel it might, in fact, have the opposite effect. The fact remains that a lot of souls have lived in that historic mansion. Many have come and gone. And based on the evidence, it seems feasible to assume that a few of them may still remain.